Today I want to share with you my recipe for pumpkin spice donuts. These are delicious cake donuts. They're not too big, they're not too small, they have great texture. You're not going to believe that they're vegan and gluten-free. And we're going to top those off with a homemade glaze. Let's get baking. Okay, first things first, we have butter in this recipe. I love Earth Balance, the sticks, not the spreadable stuff, because that just does not really work well with your recipes. The recipe calls for this to be softened. I didn't take it out of the fridge as soon as I wanted to make it a little more soft. It is almost there, but don't worry, there's a tip for that. So for this recipe, we need 10 tablespoons. So we're gonna start with that. This is gonna be our first ingredient, especially since it's not quite soft enough, so we're gonna wanna get this in the bowl first. So we've got 8 here per stick, and we'll take 2 more tablespoons from here. You just cut right through there. So the trick here is, since it's pretty soft, but I would like it to be, you know, that almost melted butter before we put it in. But when you have a high-speed mixer, like a KitchenAid, it makes it so much easier. So once we get this in there, we'll blend it down enough. But the trick is to cut it up first. You don't want to put these chunks in there. Gets a little messy, but isn't that part of the fun? So let's just do it. So we're gonna chop this up into cubes. And this process alone, you start feeling the butter's getting soft, so. Okay. So now, get every bit in there. Let's transfer that to our KitchenAid. Now, it won't work if your butter is completely solid and completely frozen. I would say you gotta let it sit out for a little bit. All right, so we got our butter in. We'll blend it up so we get that consistency we want. Just about medium. Sometimes I like to stop it in between just to make sure I'm getting all the butter, because it is still a little hard. So you're gonna have to like tap it out, get it in there. But it's already looking really good. I want it to be that nice, almost creamy icing texture. You can go a little higher. There we go. All right, let's check this. Use my spoon. Yeah, that's good. All right, so we whipped the butter to make sure it was at that softened consistency. It's like icing. That's exactly what we want. Okay. So now we want to add the remainder wet ingredients. Let's start with the vanilla. So we've got 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then the star of the show, our pumpkin puree. We've got 1 cup. I use the Whole Foods brand organic pumpkin puree. I find it's really good because even other organic brands, they tend to be a little watery. Still usable, still fine, but I prefer this one. You could use a pumpkin pie filling, but it's definitely gonna make for a very sweet donut, so I would just stick with a puree. Got all of that in there. So a few secret ingredient time, not really secret, but things that I like to use, Just Egg. I don't use it in all of my bakes, but I find some baked goods just really respond well to the not only the binding ability of the Just Egg, but just the fluffiness that it offers. So for a cake donut, I think it's really helpful. So it's about 3 tablespoons. So we have our Just Egg here, and we're gonna add 3 tablespoons of that. And I think about 3 tablespoons, if you are substituting Just Egg for a lot of recipes, about 3 tablespoons is roughly an egg. It's not an exact science, but that's kind of my rule of thumb. So we got the Just Egg in here, we have the pumpkin puree, the butter, and the vanilla. So we're gonna whip this again on high speed. And it may get a little clumpy, you'll see as it's blending, but do not worry about that. It'll all come together. I'll turn up a little higher. And as you can see, some of the sides are not blending in, so that's totally fine. We're just gonna lift this up, get those in there, shake it in. Especially since we pre-whipped that butter, it's kind of sticking to the side, which is understandable. It got used to being in there and now it doesn't want to blend with our pumpkin, but we are going to make it. And as you can see, like I said, it looks like it's getting clumpy, almost breaking. That's totally fine. Now I'm going to turn that up a little more and we're going to let that go for a few minutes. And this might be a little bit of the tedious part. You got to keep clearing the sides, but you don't want any butter stuck on the side. So if you see that, stop it and remix. We're almost there. And also at this phase, the more we're mixing, the more the butter's melting and it's getting all mixed in with the vanilla and the pumpkin. And again, I know it looks a little weird, traditional baking. Sometimes looks like it's clumping. It's totally fine. It's all gonna melt perfectly when it's all completely together. All right. So that's looking pretty good. Let's take a closer look at that. Again, that's a weird looking consistency, right? Like a little lumpy, little strange looking, but you know, we're mixing pumpkin and butter, so looks like orange cottage cheese. But that's exactly what we want. That looks great. And if you could feel it, it's just so fluffy actually. It's super light. It might look dense, but it's like really light. Okay. So now we want to combine separately our dry ingredients before we put everything together. So we're gonna start with our flour. So we have our gluten-free flour blend. You can use most blends. I wouldn't use a 1-to-1. An all-purpose flour blend is gonna be best for this recipe. My personal preference, the one that I'm using here is Bob's Red Mill. I just think it's the best flour for most of the bakes that I make. So I recommend this one, but again, you can use a lot of different varieties of gluten-free blends. So our next ingredients for the dry blend are very crucial to this recipe. We've got psyllium husk and we have xanthan gum. If you haven't heard of those, they're really great binders, particularly with gluten-free foods. The xanthan gum really gives it more of that, I mean, it's called gum, so kind of a gummy texture or that bite, that chew that you need. Sometimes people use one or the other. I'm using both here because I don't want to use too much xanthan gum in this recipe, but I still feel like it needs more binding. So we're gonna add some psyllium husk as well. And with the pumpkin being such a strong flavor, I think it helps mask any taste you would get from the psyllium husk. I don't think it's very overbearing, but some people kind of taste it. So we've got a tablespoon of the psyllium husk and a teaspoon of xanthan gum. And then now for our spices, I've got a teaspoon of salt. We've got a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, and then a teaspoon and a half of pumpkin spice. And the pumpkin spice I use, this one's called a pumpkin pie spice, but it's all the same. But if you don't have this, you can just combine all of those ingredients. It's cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and ginger. But this just makes it easier. You can buy these at any store. But again, you can make it at home. Find those ingredients in your cabinet. So we do have sugars to add, but first I want to blend these together to make sure they're all cohesively combined. Okay, and now we're gonna add our sugars. 3/4 cup of white sugar, and then we have 1/2 cup of brown sugar packed. So I'm actually gonna add those with the dry ingredients. I know sometimes you wanna cream your sugars with the wet ingredients, but I'm gonna add these all to the dry. And we're gonna get those all in there. With the brown sugar, I like to crunch down because you know it's all sticky. But again, once we combine it, our KitchenAid will get that all blended pretty well. Get those big lumps out before you combine it. And I've mentioned this before, if you ever seen any of my other videos, that we're not gonna fret about overmixing. With traditional baking, overmixing can be an issue. But with gluten-free baking, since there's no glutens to overmix, we don't have to worry about that. So we can use that to our advantage and make sure things are really blended well. Okay, so we're gonna put this back on. Gracefully. We're just gonna add about half of it right now. We'll start off slow because we don't want the flour up in our face. Just slowly increase it. It's already blending really well. I'll add some more, keeping it at this speed. And then once it's combined a bit more, then I'm gonna increase the speed and really get it blended. Great, now I just wanna take a break and get this stuff that's trying to escape on the sides. You will not escape. You will be in this donut. Okay, just another minute or two. Put it on really high. Don't be afraid to let it rip. Yeah, that looks great. I think we're there. Take a look at that. Oh yeah, look at that. Just slowly falls right off of the whisk. You gotta hit it off. We'll take a closer look at that texture, but that's perfect. You want that really ooey gooey stickiness. It's not a wet batter. You want it to be this exact consistency where it's just really thick and heavy. So this is a really great pan. It's a Wilton pan. It is non-stick, but I don't always trust non-stick, so I still like to add a little bit of extra insurance. So I've got some olive oil here. I'm not gonna go crazy with it. I just like to have a little bit added here because, I mean, there's nothing worse than waiting for your bake to come out and it doesn't. So it's not gonna hurt. I just put a little on so it's not too greasy. And I like using one of these guys, these brushes, but you can use paper towel, however. So we're gonna get that on there. I mean, again, it's non-stick, so it's not exactly coating all around, but I don't care. It's helpful. And then we're going to put a little bit of flour, not a lot, but just a little. Again, extra assurance. You don't have to do it, but I just do not like bake sticking to the pan. All right, so I'm gonna just move over to the side here and just get some of that off. All right, so our pan's ready. Let's put that on the side, and then we're gonna get our batter in there. Now, how are we gonna do that? We're not gonna scoop it in or spoon it in. We're gonna have to use a pastry bag. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm not great at filling a pastry bag. So you're gonna be on this journey with me. I do have a really large pastry bag, so I should have an easier time than I do when I'm trying to do icings and stuff. If you have a tip or you have I don't know, some advice on how to do this easier, please leave something in the comments for me. But I think what I'm gonna do is just bring it down as far as I can. And most importantly, I'm not gonna be afraid to get messy because I probably will. So let's fill our bag with this thick, delicious batter. Okay. See, I always do really good in the beginning. I guess the trick is not overfilling it. I don't know. So I'm not gonna try to get all this batter in there at once. And I have a little pan anyway, so I don't need all the batter right now. So let's just do one more scoop right now. All right, I think I did an okay job. Actually, this is where I speak too soon. Just like, get that down. Okay. So we don't need a tip, so I'm just gonna eyeball it, not make it too big, but obviously not too small because I don't wanna be forcing this out of here. I don't know if you can see, Just gonna go right about here. That should be just big enough to get the batter out. All right, let's bring our pan over. And it's time to make the donuts. Okay. Look at that. Make sure it's full before you go around, because otherwise you're gonna have to like double back and then it's gonna be really messy. Don't worry about that little lip, it'll fall. Great. You know, I think I might want to try to fill this a little more. I might be moving too fast. Let's get a little more filling. Oh, these are gonna be so good. Yeah, I think I needed to fill them a little more before I move. I wasn't listening to myself as I was telling you not to do that. Here we go. Perfect. All right, so we've got 6 started and we got a lot of batter to work with, so we might be able to make definitely 6 more, maybe even 7 or 8 more, we'll see. So you can see I probably should have filled these in a little bit more, my first 2. I went a little too fast because these last ones look great, and when they bake up, they're gonna really fill the space. So we're gonna put these in the oven, 350, and about 35 minutes. So let's get those in and then we'll start our glaze. Actually, bake time is only 14 minutes, 15 minutes max. Okay, so the donuts are in the oven. We're gonna make our glaze to go on top. Main ingredient of your glaze, powdered sugar. Now, powdered sugar can be non-vegan, unfortunately. Some of it's made with bone char, but from my research and what I've read, as long as it's organic or specifically says it's vegan, you should be good. So this is organic powdered sugar, and we have 2 cups of that. So we're gonna throw 2 cups into our KitchenAid mixer. And now we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of butter. This is nice and soft because I left it out from earlier. So we're gonna take 2 tablespoons of that. Again, we're just gonna cut it here, measure it. I might go a little over because I don't really trust this little measurement. But this should be roughly about 2 tablespoons. I'm gonna throw that in. And before I add the milk, I'm gonna do a little pre-mixing here, just to get that butter combined with the powdered sugar. So it should get nice and crumbly. Let's put it on a little high. You want it to be almost like a breadcrumb texture. Let's get a little higher. Okay, and let's just do a pinch of salt. Some balanced notes. And then this is plant milk. This one is cashew milk. I like it. I like cashew milk, almond milk. I've used hemp milk before. Any kind should be good. I would say rice milk, probably not the best, but any other kind, oat milk, they all should work fine. So just pick your favorite. Let's put that in. We're gonna blend this. I may or may not need to add more milk. We're gonna have to eyeball it up and see. We're just gonna see what texture this comes out to be and go with our preference. And now that we have some liquid in there, we can put it on a little bit higher. You definitely want to make sure all of those lumps, you can see it's a little lumpy. I'm gonna stop it there, get the sides out. Now, this is the moment of truth here. When you see this texture, you might be tempted to be like, oh, I must need more milk. I'm gonna stop myself because I've made that mistake before. I've added too much milk and then all of a sudden you have like basically runny, watery glaze, and that's not gonna set up well on your baked goods. So I think this texture is good, but let's get it blended a little more before we make a final judgment call. We're gonna have to go pretty high here because that organic powdered sugar was pretty lumpy. So let's put this up a little higher. All right, let's see where we're at. You know what? I think that is good. Let's feel it out here. Well, got some more lumps in there. I guess I should blend this a little more. You know what? I think I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of milk, only because I don't want my cake donut to stick to this when I dump it in there. But be very conservative when you're doing it. Like I said, you can always add more milk, but you cannot take it away. So I'm actually gonna measure out a tiny portion, half a teaspoon, or actually, yeah, let's do half a teaspoon. And measure out our cashew milk here. I know it looks like such a insignificant amount, but it'll make just enough difference without ruining it. And again, we're gonna go high here. And now I think we've got it. So let's take a look. That looks so good. I mean, of course it's good. It's butter and sugar, so. Yeah, I like that better. All right, so our donuts should be ready soon, but what I'm gonna do is transfer this into a more shallow bowl so that I can easily dunk my donut in. Okay, so let's get this icing into a bowl. So it's just a normal kitchen size bowl, but a lot easier to manage than this giant KitchenAid bowl, and I can just dunk my donut right in there pretty easily. And I'm just gonna go ahead, I'll put most of it in here. I might save some just in case cake gets stuck in there and then it just doesn't look pretty. I don't think that'll happen, but I don't need all that icing at one time anyway. So we've got that waiting. Our donuts should be ready soon. Let's give them a check. Come on, one more. There we go. Not so bad. Look at these beautiful cakey donuts. Perfect. They are very hot though, so we are not gonna attempt to put that icing on just yet. We're gonna cool them for at least 10 minutes, maybe 15. Okay, so these are cool enough to frost. I'm gonna put a glove on, just because I don't want to get it on my hands and leave any prints. And since we made this a little bit ago, I'm just going to give it a quick stir just to make sure it's nice and soft. That is still looking so good. All right, let's give this a whirl here. Let's not be shy. Dump it in there. Give it a little twist. Pull it up gently. Looks great. This icing will settle on there, so don't worry if it's not perfectly covered. But if you are worried, just go a little deeper. So let me get a spoon because I'm gonna cover these areas that we didn't quite get the frosting on. Yes. And honestly, the frosting's gonna settle on there, so it's okay if it looks a little wonky at first. It's gonna melt in there. I'm so glad we didn't add any more milk because this would have been way too runny if we did. We added just the right amount. Let's cover that. This one's a little shy on icing. That looks good. So it's really gooey now, but this type of icing will dry and firm up a bit, so you'll be able to pick it up a lot easier than we can right now. Look at that. But we want to make it still look a little bit prettier, so I like to take our pumpkin spice, or you can do cinnamon, and just sprinkle the sides. I don't have my little, what do they call those? The little cover on here, so I'm gonna get a sifter, and then we'll just do the sides of the pumpkin to decorate. Okay, so I have my little handy sifter here. I'm gonna use this to put the pumpkin spice in so I can get a nice little light even coat because I don't wanna dump all that on there. So we'll do it over here first. That got dumped on a little bit, but that's all right. Just do a little tap, 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 tap. I don't wanna cover the donut. I just want a little hint of extra cinnamon spice, or pumpkin spice. I want a little hint of extra pumpkin spice. And I just like the way it looks when it's just on one side, not completely covered. So here's the finished product, guys. These delicious pumpkin spice donuts. I've made these several times for people who are vegan, for people who are gluten-free, for people who are both, for people who are neither. Everybody loves these. They're so easy to make, perfect for the holidays, perfect for any time, really. Give them a try. Let me know in the comments if you've tried these and what you think. And I hope to see you next time. So soft.